Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here to take that stack of sources you have, the articles, the research, the notes on a specific cultural moment, and really turn it all into actionable insight.
And today, we are diving into something uh, pretty singular.
We are. The album is called Badlands, The Land That Listens. AI Gen. It's by the organization TATANKA.
It's a fascinating project. I mean, the source is really presented as a total synthesis of ideas. We're not just looking at a piece of music here.
No, not at all.
We're looking at how an ancient spiritual practice, the whole architecture of deep personal grief, and the absolute cutting edge of generative AI have been fused together.
And all within the framework of this single sacred landscape. Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission here is to understand the mechanism. How does the concept of the Badlands, or Makuji, as a place that actively listens, how does that provide a real pathway for processing grief?
And crucially, how is this really personal, almost geological story translated into such a contemporary, synthesized musical experience that you, the listener, can actually engage with?
That structural element seems like it's everything.
It is. And the whole deep dive is grounded in this deep reverence. The source material kicks off with a really powerful quote from the 𝗧𝗧 author and activist Mary Bravebird. It basically acts as the foundation for the entire album.
What does it say?
She says, "The land is sacred. These words are at the core of your being. The land is our mother. The rivers are blood. Take our land away and we die."
Wow.
And she ends with, "That is, the Indian in us dies."
So that tells you immediately this is not a casual listen. This isn't background music for your commute.
No, the sources are explicit. They say the album is designed for wanderers, mourners, seekers, and listeners. It's meant to function as a slow-moving vision quest in sound.
So you're meant to take this journey. You don't just observe it.
Exactly. And that journey, it requires a certain atmosphere, a certain commitment. You need a setting that's vast enough and ancient enough to really absorb the sheer magnitude of human sorrow.
Which is why the Badlands are not just the setting. They're the central character here. So let's meet the human element who starts this whole sonic quest. The protagonist in the sources, he's a man who arrives at the Badlands having already shed his old identity. He actually renames himself Wayfarer Gray.
Right. And he came there because, as the sources put it, the compass inside him no longer pointed anywhere familiar.
Which just signals this complete internal collapse, doesn't it? A loss of direction, of purpose.
And that disorientation, that's the raw material that the land then begins to work with. The setting, Makusha, is everything. To the Lakota, it's the Badlands. Outsiders often see it as harsh, desolate.
Difficult terrain.
But the sources, they highlight its dual nature. It holds this severe, powerful truth, but it's also described, quite poetically, as a place where time prays.
I think that phrase, time prays, that's so crucial to understanding this whole thing. We're talking about geological time as a spiritual force.
Exactly. Wayfarer arrives seeking, permission to feel whole again. And the land isn't passive scenery. It's an intelligence.
So the central thesis of the whole narrative is that the land is, and I'm quoting here, ancient enough to hold his grief without judgment.
That idea of geological empathy is just, it's
Yes.
profound. To frame the earth as a being that's existed long enough, that's experienced so much erosion and change, that it can absorb human pain without comment, it makes the Badlands the perfect canvas.
It forces you to instantly reframe your own personal timeline against eons.
And this philosophical idea, it's given this cultural anchor through teachings that Wayfarer carries with him, specifically from an elder named 𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗔𝗓𝗓.
What was the teaching?
The elder taught him, "The land carries memory. Everything you feel, she has felt. Walk softly. Listen deeply. She hears you."
So that just transforms the journey from, a solitary hike into a spiritual encounter, right?
It has to. If the land has felt everything, then your grief isn't unique. It's part of this global ancient memory. This sets up the listener's expectation. Wayfarer is walking with memory. He's seeking a conversation.
Even if that conversation is just the sound of wind on stone. So we really need to stress for you, the listener, that the 12 tracks are not a literal biography of this guy, Wayfarer Gray.
Not at all. They're designed to capture the atmosphere of that inner pilgrimage, that physical ache of loss, the wonder of deep geological time, and those quiet moments when the spiritual dialogue finally happens.
So if the land listens, what does it actually sound like when it finally speaks? And that leads us right into part 2, the sound world. The landscape holds the grief. We need to talk about what that grief sounds like and how TATANKA decided to tell this ancient story with modern technology.
And the sound is where the ancient story really collides with the hyper-modern tools. You might expect, I don't know, a traditional acoustic album?
Or something with flutes or something.
Right. But the sources make it clear it's a collision. You have these Lakota-inflected ambient textures, these really deep earth drones that probably register more as a feeling than a sound.
Like infrasound, yeah.
Post-folk elements. But then those are smashed up against these surprisingly crisp, modern EDM tribal drums. It creates this tension.
I wonder if that combination helps explain the journey itself. The traveler is internally fragmented, and the music is reflecting that blend of the spiritual and the synthetic.
I think that's precisely it. And the synthesis, it lets them convey the sheer vastness of it all. It's not just electronic, it's generative. The sources highlight the use of AI-processed harmonics. They're meant to sound like memory singing through wind.
Memory singing through wind.
And you have these wide, sustained glacial pads that are meant to capture the scale and the overwhelming silence of the Badlands.
Okay, so the sources are drawing a really hard line here between the ancient and the hypermodern. But let's tackle the tricky bit. How do you prevent using AI tools like ChatGPT or Meta.ai with sacred Lakota concepts from sounding, well, frankly, from sounding opportunistic or appropriative?
A really important question. And the sources address it, I think, through transparency and mission alignment. They are making a statement about responsible, accessible creation. The AI wasn't just used to, hit a button and generate a full track.
So it's not a replacement for the human.
No, it's augmentation. It was used to process existing human input, generating textures, modulating harmonics, maybe modeling sonic environments based on data about wind patterns or geological frequencies.
That distinction matters so much. They're not hiding the technical details. They are formatting them. We know the composer worked with ChatGPT, Meta.ai, and Producer.ai, but what really strikes me is the tech backbone they list. The DAW was Audacity 3.7.5.
Running on Linux. Ubuntu 25.0.
I mean, that level of detail is unusual, isn't it?
It is, and it's a philosophical choice. It shows commitment to transparency. It suggests the sophisticated synthesis wasn't reliant on, multi-thousand-dollar studio software. Audacity is free. Linux is free.
Oh, I see the connection now. It aligns with the broader mission of TATANKA, which focuses on SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, DEI, and AI.
Exactly. Using these tools demonstrates that high-concept art, blending these deep cultural themes with generative tech, it doesn't require massive commercial backing.
It pushes back against the idea that deep cultural exploration has to be gatekept by expensive professional studios. It's an open-source spirit applied to a deeply spiritual topic.
So the musical mandate, it's rooted in utility and accessibility, not just spectacle. They're creating an atmosphere that feels like walking through the Badlands at dawn, ancient, sacred, wind-carved, with the explicit goal of guiding your emotions from sorrow towards revelation. The tools just serve the quest.
Yeah.
Which brings us to part 3. The core of this deep dive. The album structure itself is so clearly laid out as a sacred walk. The first couple of tracks set the scene, but that middle 10, those chapters are entirely devoted to Wayfarer's internal arc.
His psychological and spiritual journey.
Yes, this is where the music moves from just setting an atmosphere to actually triggering a transformation.
So let's track that transformation. He starts out wandering, just lost in his grief. The turning point, according to the sources, comes with track 4, which is called Wakash, or Sacred.
And this isn't just a geographical marker. It's the moment he stops trying to force a direction and just begins to listen. He recognizes the holiness of the ground he's on.
That realization leads to an immediate shift in scale then. Track 5 is called Layers of Time.
And the sources say that here, the dialogue is with deep geological history. The music probably slows way down, the drones get deeper, the sediment becomes scripture.
That's powerful.
It forces you, the listener, to grapple with scale. You move from your personal, immediate grief to the scale of eons. And that sudden change in perspective, it's incredibly therapeutic. It minimizes the self.
And that perspective leads to the first response from the land itself. On track 6, Hetchetu Willow Acknowledgement, the land responds.
This is a monumental moment in the narrative. It's not a shouted cure or anything like that. It's a whisper. It is so. Just an acknowledgement. Your pain is seen. It's valid. The land holds it.
And that really establishes the vision quest. From there, it deepens as the journey moves into night.
Right. Track 7, Night of the Star Nation, or 𝗧𝗔𝗓𝗓 Oyate. This is where the land reveals its cosmic memory. The sky, with no light pollution, becomes the focus. The stars, the nation of stars, are described as leaning closer.
What a beautiful image. It's this moment of universal connection after being so isolated.
And that celestial link sets the stage for the deep introspection on the next track. Track 8, Firelight Visions. The fire is the threshold. It's the meeting point where the present moment in the Badlands merges with his emotional past.
He sees his own role in his suffering, his stubborn silence, as the source puts it.
And he's forced to confront that sharp, clean moment of loss that caused his fragmentation. It all builds to the emotional and spiritual climax in track 9, 𝗧𝗔𝗓𝗍𝗓, compassion.
This is the breakthrough.
It is. The revelation is a voice that is felt in the earth, not heard in the air, and it affirms, you do not walk alone. The isolation just shatters.
The sources describe this with such powerful imagery. It's the point where grief is no longer a burden to be carried, but is released into the earth. The land is described as drinking his tears like offerings.
And that's the transaction, isn't it? The entire vision quest centers on that. He gives his pain to the earth, and the earth provides the compassion he needs to go on.
So the rest of the album is the aftermath, the return.
The clarity comes in track 11, the return. He walks out at dawn. And the resolution isn't magic, it's alignment. And the album ends with track 12, 𝗓𝗓.
Gratitude.
Gratitude. And the core takeaway for Wayfarer, and for you as a listener, is that the compass inside him realigned, not to a geographical direction, but to an internal truth. The land remembered him, and now he remembered himself.
The whole journey was a painful process of recollection, just enabled by the vast patience of Makashicha. So, what does this all really mean when we synthesize the sources on this project from TATANKA? This deep dive shows a uniquely successful and intentional attempt to blend ancient reverence, personal trauma, and cutting-edge AI tech.
And all into a cohesive, ethical, and deeply spiritual narrative. It really serves as an extraordinary blueprint for synthesized art. It uses its structure, the 12 chapters mirroring a psychological journey, and its transparency.
Using those open source tools.
To transform dense source material. And the source material here is raw human emotion and geological time. The result is a work that's designed to guide the listener through profound voluntary change.
It really forces us to ask what functions art, especially synthesized art, can perform beyond just, entertainment. If the Badlands are this ancient sacred ground capable of absorbing individual grief, it raises a question about our collective responsibilities now.
Indeed. We know that Sitting Bull, the great Lakota Sioux chief, once said, let us put our minds together and see what life we can make for our children.
Right.
So if this album shows the earth absorbing individual griefs, what modern sacred ground, whether it's a piece of generative art or a collective technological effort built on that same accessible, transparent ethos of TATANKA, what could we create today to absorb our shared anxieties?
To help us forge that better aligned life for the next generation, that's the challenge this synthesis of sound and stone leaves us with.